I didn't have any expectations that this was really a core thing, in effect, because this is really wonderful. How you can control both like the decoding part, the encoding part, how you can pipe everything together. This is one of the sort of, it shifts away how you think about a problem, because usually now when I think of a problem, I start thinking about what is the schema, right? It is very different from, what is the actual like application code. You really design your schema, you think, well, how should it like transform the data here? And then you work your way up to getting it all the way, in your code. So I think like schema was a very, very positive, unexpected thing that came out of this. To give you an example, like I always wanted to, again, in the quest for like streamlining and being as efficient as possible as a startup, things like documentation, I care a lot about documentation, and the more we can put that on like autopilot, the better, right? So the ability to take your public API endpoints and via the schemas generate an open API spec is exactly the kind of things that you want, right? So yeah, this was a very, very nice discovery.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that goes hand in hand with what I've also found in my development practices over the years, is that I always started to think more about the types of a system. This is like typically what I start out with. I just like describe the types. But then I've also found myself thinking about, actually, this data of this particular type doesn't just live inside of this boundary of the system, but it needs to move across network boundaries, across thread boundaries, etc. And now you need to serialize, deserialize that variable. And this is where schemas come in. So I ended up doing exactly the same as you. Like I start thinking about like, okay, what data am I dealing with here? And I model it as schemas and derive the types from it. And we see this here as like a big revelation. Turns out in other programming languages, that's what you always do. When you have like in Rust, etc., when you have like a struct definition, you can derive schemas from it. But I think for TypeScript, this is really, for most engineers, that's something novel. And I think this is a pattern that should be embraced much more, since I think default is you just ignore the existence of a schema and you JSON stringify everything. And then you're surprised what happens to your classes or to your dates. So yeah, that schema is such an integral part of Effect, I think is no coincidence. And I'm very happy that it gets so much attention for detail.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it's not only the fact that you have like decoding and encoding and so on, it's the fact that it's so much in harmony with the rest of the whole like Effect way of doing things, right? So it just feels so, an integral part of Effect itself.